where we met. I can tell by your smile. You hadn't been with a good girl like me in a while.
We all share the same resources. They're not infinite. They're going to end. And it is our responsibility to ensure the quality of life people on this planet are going to live in. Something that's called 人类命运共同体. That is the transformative force of development nobody can stop. Good evening, everybody. 你们好吗? My name is Hodan Osman, and I come from a country called Somalia. Somalia is one of the most beautiful countries in East Africa. Only somebody who's been there would know. Somalia has one of the most beautiful coastlines and beaches on the African continent. Somalia has one of the most diverse and most beautiful wildlife in the African continent. Somalia has some of the richest farmlands on the African continent. Not a lot of you know about, though. Why? I study communication studies. I analyze media. I analyze film. I analyze content in media. And it's always surprising why the stories we hear in the news, in the films, are always sensational. They talk about the war, they talk about the pirates, they talk about the famine, they talk about the drought, they talk about everything that's negative. How many of them speak about the positivities that lay there every day? How many of them speak about the everyday stories of people just living their normal lives? And that is why people have the wrong idea about the richest continent on the entire planet, Africa. Africa in recent years became synonymous with underdevelopment. It became synonymous with chaos. It became synonymous with everything that's bad. And that's sad, because that's not the reality on the ground. People who have seen for themselves and have lived there know that Africa is a land where children are happy. I'll give you a very simple example. Last year, I went with some of my colleagues to Zanzibar. Zanzibar is one of the most beautiful places I've ever visited. Now, we come back to what it is the reality in Africa today. Yes, there is lack of infrastructure connectivity. Yes, there is lack of technological improvement. Yes, there is a lot that's lacking on the continent. But that doesn't mean that poverty was Africa's destiny. I believe that poverty disrupted Africa's destiny. I'll give you a very simple example. In the 1980s, Somalia was the #1 exporter of bananas in the world. Would you believe that? It was the #1 exporter of bananas in the entire world. Somalia's bananas were amongst the most tasty in the entire planet. Today, we don't have anybody farming. Why? Everybody thinks there's a beautiful life in Europe, in America. They're taking boats, risking their lives, and they're dying because of illegal migration. 13 years ago, when I came to China, almost all of my Chinese friends longed to go to America, longed to go to Europe. Why? Because they saw those places as extremely developed, as beautiful, as fascinating. Now, what about you, young graduates, especially my Chinese friends here at the stage? When you graduate, where do you want to work? Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen. Because in 13 years, Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen became a lot more beautiful than some of the leading capitals in the world today. And that's the reality of development. It's a moving wheel. It's never standing still. It's always moving. So however you see Africa today, trust me, in 10 years' time, it will be completely different. Another example. 13 years ago, I came to China. My first stop, naturally, was Beijing. And then I was heading to the university where I was supposed to start my Chinese language. It's a city called Yangzhou. 烟花三月. 下扬州, very good. Yangzhou is a beautiful city in Jiangsu province. Now, I took a train from Beijing to Yangzhou. It took me 14 hours. And I sat on Wopo. Now, for me, it was the first time I take a train. It was fascinating for me how slow it was, how it stopped in almost every little town we went through, and how long the journey was. Now, what about today? Today, I can take a train from Beijing, and it will take me to Hangzhou in how long? 5 hours. How amazing is that? That is the transformative force of development nobody can stop. Every day, I look here, there's a new building. I look there, there's a new road. I look there, there's a new train station. What about in Africa? Not many countries in Africa have witnessed this kind of transformative force. Ethiopia is one, Djibouti is another, Kenya is another, but why? Let's ask ourselves, how come some countries in Africa are witnessing transformative changes in their countries and the lives of their people and their socio-economic development, while some aren't? China planned for this 40 years ago. Everything you see today was planned and envisioned and continuously implemented. We don't have a lack of plans in Africa. When I went to Somalia, I visited almost every single ministry we have. I looked in their cupboards. They have these huge books of researches, of plans, national development plans that are gathering dust. Some of the changes happening in the continent. This year, 2 months ago to be exact, I had the pleasure to go to Nigeria. Now, for our viewers in China, when you look at that station, do you see anything different from what you see here in China? It's quite similar, right? As I walked up, it felt so familiar. I felt like I was in Jinhua. And this is the train, made in China, for Africa. This train was completely filled. No single seat was empty. And it's like that 5 times a day, taking people in between Abuja and Kaduna. Its entire length is 186.5 kilometers, and it travels 100 kilometers an hour. When you're sitting inside, it's no different than when sitting in one of the old trains here in China. The only difference is the scenery outside. That is not China. However, this is the change that's happening. This is the change that's happening. And China realized one very important principle. We all live in the same world. We all share the same resources. They're not infinite. They're going to end. It is our responsibility to be responsible in how we use these resources. What does that mean? It means that my happiness is connected to yours. My prosperity is connected to yours. My life is connected to yours. And that's how we are interdependent on each other. In Somali, we have a saying that says, "Far fol madaqdo," which means a single finger cannot wash a face on its own. If you want to clean your face, you need 10 fingers, which means we need to all gather together to build up our shared happiness. Thank you very much.